you've been there for how many years have you been there now? Sorry.
So I've been a business owner for 6 years, and I've been in real estate all up for 18,
Yep.
on the Upper North Shore for about 15 of those years.
Yeah, cool. And in terms of your growth period, when did you, like, obviously we're going to have a lot of younger listeners listening into this, trying to find those one percenters and golden nuggets off you.
Yep.
How did it take you to get to the point where you're starting to hit levels of stride of success, and what was it like coming up? Like, your daily tasks have obviously varied from the start till now. Like, how has it changed for you?
So I often joke, but it's probably not a joke. The first 10 years of my career were a bit of a joke. Like, I was average, kind of just not really doing much. I was not setting the world on fire. I wasn't, didn't do badly, but didn't really get to any great heights. I was probably doing what most people are doing, which is just going through peaks and troughs and having a good month and a crap month, and just really kind of didn't have the head in the game, didn't have things where I wanted to get them. And that showed in terms of what I was writing GCI. Then I think when it all changed for me was probably getting married. I got married 7-8 years ago in December. And at that point in time, I was kind of, a salesperson within a business where I had motivations, but I didn't really, I didn't have, I guess it was all about me rather than anyone else. Then I met my wife, then she got pregnant. We kind of, I had, my motivation became a lot stronger and a lot greater. So my headspace changed. And once my headspace changed and I changed the structure of how I ran my sales business and my team, everything changed for me.
Cool. And I remember hearing you on another podcast, or I think it was on one of Tom Panos's interviews a few years back, and you mentioned that the skill set level between someone that's writing 500,000 to someone that's writing 5 million isn't actually that much different, but it comes down to mindset, and I guess that's living proof of it. Yep. But when you talk about change of mindset, did your daily tasks change, or were you just working harder or working smarter? How did it change your work?
It's a bit of everything. So I think the main focus for me, and I think this is probably a lesson that I took too long to learn, was I think most people in our industry, they think they're competing against other agents. They think they're competing against people within their own office. They think they're competing against hard sellers and hard buyers, and that's what they're always in a struggle against. And realistically, once you realize the only person you're competing with is yourself, and you genuinely believe that, then the game changes. Because if you understand that you're competing against who you were yesterday, you got to be better today, and you've got to do better than you did yesterday. Once you realize that, nothing else matters. Nothing else at all matters, because then you can't make excuses. You can't go, oh, my competitor undercut me. No, they did. They may have, but you just weren't good enough in that listing presentation. You didn't connect well enough. You didn't put in the time. You didn't actually get across all your points of difference. So the moment you realize that the competition is yourself and not anyone else, is that the moment your headspace changes.
Yeah, got you. I guess the marketplace that you're working in as well, it's going to demand high performance when you're dealing with, an average sale. What's your average sale price?
Around 2.8 million.
2.8 mil. Now, when you started working that Upper North Shore market, I know there's a whole lot of stock that is high price, but did you start at that high price point, or did you?
Yeah, definitely not. I started in the sort of the cheaper pocket of Wahroonga. When I first got into this market, my biggest competition was the number one LJ Hooker business in the country, and some really, really tough competition, and good agents, good people that connect with other people well. So the market we're in, which is it's probably one of the highly contested markets in the whole of Sydney. Like, everyone talks about the eastern suburbs, but I think the North Shore is just as competitive, and the quality of agents is just as good, if not better. So it's one of those markets that if you're off, you're not going to do any good. And if you're 5% off, then people are going to cream you. So you really need to be at the top of your game. And I also look at my competition, and I think most agents try and in their minds make their competition into these bad people and talk badly about them and think badly about them. Whereas a majority of my competition, they seem to be decent people that do good business, that their clients like them. And once you actually start thinking that way, it forces you to be better rather than blame other people.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. And what would be your advice to someone that's trying to crack into a higher price point? Like, for example, with myself, my average sale price is 1.7, around that price. There's another suburb next to it where you're averaging probably 2.2 as an average sale price. What would be your advice to someone like me that would try to go to that market, or would you say don't and just and service the core area you're already working?
The thing is, I'd say put price to one side. So don't focus too much on price. If you're doing the core activities and the things you need to be doing day to day, it doesn't matter what price bracket you're in. So that everything that got you to be a good agent in your $1.7 million market, if you just recreate and do the exact same things and have the same habits in a different pricing market, you'll get the same success. The price point, I used to be the same in my mind probably 6 or 7 years ago. It was like, oh, well, I don't really sell much in the top end, so I'm going to just be happy in the, the $1 to $1.5 million price range. And then as soon as I realized that it's nothing to do with what you sell in, it's the way you think about things. I now can list a property that's worth $10 million, and I don't think of it any differently to a $1.5 million house. It's the same basics that you need, which is connecting with people, making them understand that you're there for their best interests. You want to get the best price for them. Most people, that's what they want. They want to feel that the person working for them is going to do the best job for them and put in the effort. I got feedback from a vendor yesterday that's sort of a very highly priced home that we got the listing on, and her feedback to me was, you weren't pushy, you didn't spin bullshit, and you were honest and you seemed genuine. Whereas the other agents, I feel like they had commission breath, and they probably were all about just getting a high priced property for their ego rather than because they wanted to do the right thing for the owner.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter the price range. In short, if you've got the same strategies around what you're doing with the lower price properties, it's all about connection with people.
Yeah.
Well, guys, what we'll do, I'll introduce the podcast now. David, appreciate your that little bit of segment where we could get to understand you, your business. So I'll open up the podcast. So the way it'll run, Kevin and myself will ask you questions from a buyer. I'm a buyer's agent. Kevin's obviously a selling agent. So we'll try and get both perspective to delve a little bit about you, a little bit of your past life prior to being the owner of North Shore Ray White. And then also what the future looks like for you.
Sure.
So just to clarify, owner of Ray White North Shore.
Ray White up in North Shore.
Up in North Shore. And in turn, do you mind if we touch on some of the numbers you're hitting?
Sure.
Fantastic. What would be, I guess, the number you want us to open up with for you? In terms
do you mean for the business or for me?
For yourself.
I've written over 4 million in the last 12 months. And the business has done, last month we sold 150 million in property last month.
Wow, mate, phenomenal numbers. So I'll start us off. So guys, welcome back to another episode of Both Sides of the Fence, where myself, Daniel Beadle, and my co-host Kevin Buchanan will interview agents and people with like-minded goals to get a perspective from a buyer's agent, myself, and a selling agent, Kevin. So today we're very humbly welcomed by David Walker, who is the owner of the Ray White real estate company in the Upper North Shore. Himself writing 4 million, and his team just in the last month have done about 150 million in transactions. So David, really thank you for coming on board. Do you mind introducing yourself and I guess why real estate, and how did you get to such a position right now?
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I sort of fell into real estate straight after school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but one of my friends was going into real estate, and as an 18-year-old, he said, "Why don't you go and get a job in real estate?" And I did that, and that was what, 18 years ago now. So it was, I guess, probably sounds cliche, but it was always in my blood a bit. As a young child, my mum used to drag me around to open homes, and she used to love buying real estate and renovating it, and moving on to the next one. So she tells a story, as a 10-year-old, she'd take me to an open home. I'd get the floor plan, play around with the floor plan, and see how the house could be better, and better the floor plan. And from there, it kind of got into wanting to kind of get into beautiful houses and look at beautiful houses. And here I am as a real estate agent.
Awesome. So, mate, 4 million, how do you do such big numbers? Tell me a bit about the mindset going from an 18-year-old transitioning all the way to where you are now. Our kind of audience is quite young, myself included. What would your advice be to get to where you are and how to maintain that level?
Yeah, look, real estate is it's not a short race. You've got to have a long-term view. It's the tortoise and hare thing. Like I very much the tortoise. You look at some other people who seem to have runs on the board straight away. But I've tried to build a sustainable business over the last sort of 6 to 7 years, where I just built a really good team around me. They all have their own functions in the team, but really focused on how I can be as good as I could be in my role, and having a good listing presentation, knowing how to close buyers, getting the right dialogue down pat, so that when you're in front of people, you're closing when you can close. But being genuine in everything I do, I think, is really important. But I think the most important critical thing is the way you have your head set, and the way you think about things. So I think most of us, we're always in a struggle with ourselves and the way we think about things. So if you can get your head right, then you're well on the way to writing good numbers.
Yeah. One thing that I found really interesting with you, David, when I met up with coffee with you a few months ago, you of a work-life balance more than anybody else of these top agents. I feel like a lot of the top agents, it's more like, hey, we're in the office at 5 a.m. and, it's very robotic, but it feels like your business is more like a flowing state. There's nothing grinds. Now, when you started your career and your own standalone agent, were you because I know now you're working 5 days a week, but your business flows a lot easier. It's not like you're pushing business. Were you like that in the beginning? Were you still 5 days a week taking more time off for family and stuff, or was it a different business model back then?
Look, I think you've got to put in the time and the hours, and especially when you're a younger person coming into real estate, you can't kind of go, I want to get work-life balance, or I don't want to burn out. Like, the bottom line is you've got to work your ass off. And anyone that tries to say that they don't want to work hard, they just want to, work a few hours, and that you're not going to last in a highly competitive market. So I did work hard, but I worked smart as well. I'd set challenges for myself. So if I could get a certain amount of leads or listings, then I'd give myself I'd allow myself to have a day off. So I think if people who don't have challenges or set goals for themselves and just kind of go, okay, well, it's another week in real estate, I'll see what I can do this week, and then get to the end of the week and achieve nothing. Like, that's, I think, a typical week of a real estate agent. Whereas if you turned around and said, okay, I'm going to do 500 calls for the week, or I'm going to knock on 500 doors. If I do, I'll be able to take my Friday day off. If I don't, then I'm not taking my day off. If you challenge yourself and actually hold yourself accountable to hitting the numbers, then it will change the way you work.
Yeah. Do you think that's it? Would you say that's one of your big contributing factors why you've been able to consistently stay at the top, by actually taking time off?
But also rewarding yourself for doing well. I'm my biggest critic. I really don't care what anyone thinks about me or what anyone says about me, unless there's somebody close to me. But I genuinely care about what I think about myself. So, and how I am as a person, how I am as a father, how I am as a husband. So if you're your own biggest critic, rather than, I think a lot of us are too easy on ourselves, but you don't want to always be kind of negative. But if you know you haven't done something as good as you could do it, or you didn't put in the effort, I think a lot of people go, oh, it's okay, I'll just do it next time. Or I didn't get up and go for a walk this morning because I was a bit lazy. That's easy to do that. Like, it's making the hard decisions and going, well, if I don't do this, there's going to be a punishment. You've just got to have your goals and set, and actually stick to them. People go, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to, lose 5 kilos. Well, what's your punishment if you don't, and what's your reward if you do? So it's the same with real estate. You've got to have your goals that you want to put in place. If you want to write 500 grand for the year, then work backwards and go, what is that per month? If in month 2 you kind of haven't written the 50 grand per month you need, why is that? What punishments? Are you working 7 days then? Like, you have a punishment that you go, I really don't want to do that, so therefore I'm going to work harder, I'm going to work smarter, I'm going to actually do the calls today so I can take my day off tomorrow. But then if you do them, you've got to reward yourself as well and go, well, I'm going to take my wife away for a weekend if I can get 3 listings. So it's the really being hard on yourself to kind of keep yourself in check. And then once you create your habits, then, which is, I guess, where I am in my life now, I've got habits that I do every single day. So I get up, I went for a 10-kilometer walk through the national park this morning. So it becomes a habit. It's not something that I wake up and it's a chore to do. So once you create these habits, then that sort of gives you the whole sort of platform for working on yourself every day, but it becomes part of you.
Yeah.
Hey, David, just with the, you were talking about setting a boundary for if you don't hit your standard, you have punishment. What's a couple of examples of punishments you've set for yourself?
I will literally say, I don't really do it as much these days because I kind of have set the platform. But what I would do back, 4 or 5 years ago, would say, okay, if I write 250,000 this quarter, we're going to go away to Byron Bay for a weekend. If we don't, I'm going to work every single day off. And wow. Somebody like that, if you let your wife down, there's nothing worse in the world, because they're looking forward to it, especially with a young baby, going, well, if you don't do it, why aren't you doing it? Where's your listings coming from? They're buying into it. But it's actually keeping yourself to it, not hitting the numbers. If you do 249,000, you're not going on that holiday. Like, it's actually being honest and hard on yourself.
Yeah, I bet you hit that target every time.
Every time. There's no way you're not going to. And then people that are on your journey and that are involved, and they sort of win when you win and lose when you lose, they're kind of encouraging along the way.
Yeah, that's powerful. I like that. I'm going to implement that for sure.
Like, if I said to you right now, Kevin, like I said, I'm going to give you a check for $1 million. All you need to do is go and find 5 sellers in the next 24 hours that you don't know right now. How many doors would you knock on? How many phone calls would you make? What would you do? You wouldn't be on the end of this podcast, because you'd be going out just looking for and hunting and hustling and finding. I guarantee you'd find 5 sellers.
I would have hung up right now and started calling.
But that's where if you actually every day, and it's hard to keep up like this all the time, but if you have your head in the space of going, I'm going to make myself work to get those 5 sellers in the next 24 hours or next 7 days. If I don't, I'm not taking a day off, or something that you really enjoy doing, or I'm not going to go on that holiday. You're going to work so much smarter and harder. You're not going to be taking, a coffee break for an hour, or just go for a drive and kind of waste time. You're not going to be gossiping in the office, or you're going to be working hard because there's an outcome at the end of it.
Yeah.
Hey, David, Kevin and I both get coaching from Jeffy Gowett, who's, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he's a really good coach, and he helps a lot of people in the real estate industry. And one of his philosophies, which he advocates for us, is the concept of flow, not force, where it's all good and well to set huge goals and targets, but if you're forcing your action and you're getting that commission bug where all you're caring about is commission, and you get that commission breath. What's your thoughts on balancing flow in achieving a goal versus forcing yourself on an outcome and then projecting the wrong energy?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. You've got to find whatever works for you. So what works for me might be very different to what works for somebody else in the office. I've found once you find your pain points, you can set goals towards your pain points, but also to your pleasure points. So like for some people, people are driven by money. Some people are driven by ego. Some people are driven by, impressing other people. So you've got to find what your pleasure points and what your pain points are. There's sort of the flow and force. It kind of, if flow works better for you, then do it. If force works better for you, do it. So I'm not a big believer that all shoes fit all sizes. So you've got to really work out what works for you. As soon as you do that and you kind of connect with something, do that. That's the biggest thing. But I think the biggest takeaway that you could have from anything I say would be just work out that you're the person that you're competing with. No one else is your competitor. It doesn't matter how good or bad your competition is. If you're the best version of who you can be, then you can't if you lose a listing presentation, it doesn't matter because you did the best job you could. But the worst thing you can do is go, oh, I should have done this, or I could have done that, or I could have said that. If you go into every presentation, or you on a Saturday on show day, you're there kind of in good form, you're not hungover, you're kind of ready to put deals together, which then comes across with potential sellers who are also buyers. If you're in the best form on those days, then that's where you're not really going to be getting beaten. I think most people have this headspace of, oh, my competition is the reason I'm not doing better. It's not. The reason you're not doing better is because you're not good enough and you need to be better.
Yeah. Why do you think you're better than your competitors?
Do you know what? In a lot of cases, I'm not. So I just feel like in my head, I'm comfortable with where I am. And my competition's really good. My competition are decent people. My competition, I'd list my house with a lot of my competition. Some I probably wouldn't, but others, like a lot of my competition are good, decent people. And so I think the reason why I can do the numbers I do is because I'm challenging myself. I'm always challenging myself. I'm always questioning myself. I'm not saying the same thing in a listing presentation like a robot every single day. Because I'm always wanting to be as best as I can, I'm like right now, I'm redesigning our whole listing presentation across the whole business, and it's going to be incredible. Like it's exactly everything I've been wanting to culminate, put it all together, and it's going to be amazing. But I guarantee you in 6 to 12 months time, I'm going to be going, okay, how can I change that now? Because it might become stale. So it's always being better than you were yesterday.
Yeah. I think what I've seen throughout this industry is there is a little bit of a revolving door throughout the industry with younger agents coming in thinking they're going to make a quick buck pretty quick. And obviously we both know that's not the case, and it takes a long period of time to get to a point of level of decent success for most people's careers. But where do you think a lot of younger agents go wrong before they hit that level of success?
Yeah, everyone wants immediate gratification. So everyone wants to be driving the BMW after a year in real estate. Everyone wants to be Gavin Rubinstein. Everyone wants to be Elliot Plax. Everyone wants to be on $1 Million Listing Australia. Whereas you've got to understand that you've got to be a hard worker first. You've got to learn the trade. It's like all of the people that come into our industry, look at it as an apprenticeship. You've got 10 years of hard work. You've got 10 years of pounding pavement, 10 years of being a pen pusher and doing what other people are telling you to do. If you can put in that 10 years of hard work, but also try and find somebody you can learn a lot from, if you can do that and put in 10 good years of probably not making a huge amount of money, but you can still make decent money, in 10 years' time, you could be earning more than what, say, a doctor earns. But doctors also have to put in 15 years of hard work before they start earning good money as well. So, but like any industry, only the best are going to make decent money, and 80% of the people will make 20% of the income, and 20% will make 80% of the income. So if you want to be part of the 20%, it's all about putting your head down, working hard, finding a good mentor, and being humble and kind of along the way having a good time.
Yeah, cool. And in terms of mentors, do you use mentors at the moment? And if you do, are they just via social media? Are they actual people in real life? How do you operate with that?
Well, I don't think anyone should be getting mentors from social media, because what people put on social media probably really isn't them. People that I look up to, that I have a lot of time for, friends, family, my parents, in our industry. other really top performers. Like, there's really good business owners across the Ray White group that I'm good friends with, that I speak to regularly, that I celebrate their successes, even though they might be competing in a group sense. But I love to see other people do well rather than see people fail. People, trainers like Tom Panos, he's real, like he's raw. I love that. I love people who are real and honest. But yeah, I wouldn't say I have any mentors as such, but like as a younger person, when I came into the industry, I looked up to people like John McGrath, Matt Steinwade. When I was first in the industry, I remember doing his sort of his course that he had back then. And still, there's so much you can learn from people like that. But if you just look at what the top agents are doing and work out whether that works for you or not, then, in my area, I wouldn't be able to go and wear Gucci shoes and no socks, crucified. But in other areas, that works for people. So do what works for you, do what works, but don't. And the best thing you can do is find somebody who's doing well and work out why they're doing well and listen to them and take advice and just put your head down, work hard, and be honest.
Yeah.
So what does the daily activity or weekly activity look like for you now, David?
Yeah, look, I spend a lot of time both on the business and both working listings. As I said, I'm lucky that I've got a great team around me. So we've got listings on the go, but I know that the roles of the team are getting done by those people. So a day for me is it's not, as I said to you before, it's kind of getting up, doing a bit of some sort of exercise, spending some time with the family. I don't get to work at 6 a.m. I don't, do what a lot of people in at the top end seem to do, because it's more important to spend time with my family than it is to be in the office. But when I'm in the office, I'm working, I'm on the phone, I'm calling, speaking to people, talking to vendors, talking to buyers, doing everything you'd expect me to do. But every day is different. Like I'd be doing 2 to 3 appraisals or presentations per day, all with immediate sellers. I don't really deal with anyone that's not selling their house in the next 3 to 6 months. So it's all just very much dollar productive stuff. And I don't do things that are not getting towards a goal. Like if somebody says, can you come and give me an appraisal, I'm not selling for 5 years, that'll be somebody else on my team that does that. I don't do stuff that's not going to be immediate kind of in the next 3 to 6 month sort of stuff.
Yep. And I carry on, Daniel.
What would you say has been the biggest mistake you've made or an obstacle you've had to overcome that you could share that you wish you know now?
The biggest thing that I would say to anyone who probably has or is starting out is, I probably sound like a broken record, is start realizing that your competition's yourself. So the moment that I realized that, which was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, it didn't matter what anyone else did. It didn't matter what other agents were listing. It didn't matter, whether a person had more listings than me or not. As soon as I realized the only person letting me down was me, that was when everything changed for me, because I didn't make excuses and I didn't kind of say, oh, it was another reason why I didn't get the listing. As soon as I realized it was on me, the way that I thought about things changed.
Yeah. When I started my career, I was told to always start under or get under a great agent that's doing numbers to learn the ropes the right way. Now, did you start your career under someone writing big numbers, or did you kind of learn it yourself?
Yeah, so I started my real estate career down on the Northern Beaches for 3 or 4 years, and I had some really good agents down there who were within the business, who all different stages of their career, and I learned a lot from them. And then once I came up into this area, there were within the business some really good people and agents as well. I probably learned just as much from them as I did other top agents within the industry. Reading, listening to interviews, podcasts weren't really a thing 10, 15 years ago, but just learning as much as I could, going to as many training sessions as I could. the one thing that probably I didn't realize at the time that I do now, and I think we sort of touched on this earlier, Kevin, was I'm a big believer that if you want to do 0 to 500K, it's sort of, that's all skill set. So anyone can write 500 grand in whichever market. That's all learning scripts, dialogues, knowing what to say when somebody says they want you to lower your fee, or knowing what to say when a buyer says, I'm not sure, or we're interested, but we just can't make a decision. It's knowing what to say in any situation that could arise. So your 0 to 500 is all skill, training, honing in your listing presentation, and just being really good on the skill side. And anyone can do that, no matter what else is going on with them. 500 to $1 million is all about getting your team structure right, getting people around you who are doing the non-dollar productive activity, so you can focus on dollar productive, and really kind of building the right people around you. And then $1 million plus on a consistent basis is all getting your head in the right place. So anyone that can write $1 million, that's all well and good, but to do it consistently, that's then you've got to have your head in the right space. You see so many people who have an amazing year, but then the next year it goes back to half of what they did the year before. And that's either they let their ego get in the way, or they probably either tried to, hustle their team too hard and lost a couple of team members. But most of the time it's people that just can't handle continuous success on a consistent basis, and they haven't got their head in the right place, and it goes in a bit of a spiral. And then the year after they might kind of get back on track, and but it's all hot and cold. But people that consistently get their head in the right space, they're the ones that will do consistent numbers, sort of over $1 million.
Yeah. You just touched on it where you mentioned losing team members by hustling them too hard. How do you manage your team? Do you give them much time off? Like, are there incentives in place for time off? How do you make sure that your team's well looked after?
Yeah, again, this works for me, so it might not work for everybody, but I don't micromanage. So when a team member starts, they know what my expectations are, and they know if they're in an associates type role, they know what the numbers need to look like. And so for the first little while, I'll work on numbers and getting them in the right habits. But after that, I don't micromanage. I don't need to know where everyone is all moments of the day. I don't really care, as long as the stuff's getting done and getting done well, and we're getting good feedback. So for me, it's all about allowing people to have autonomy in their own lives and business. Within my team, I've got 2 mums that are, trying to homeschool at the moment. And I give them as much flexibility as I possibly can, because I understand for them, home life's more important than work life. So I'm not going to try and force them into, being at work 24 hours a day when they've got more important things to do. But because I do that, I feel like I get more out of them, because they'll then do things after hours, ensuring they get done. But I give huge flexibility. And then the associates in my team, they know what they need to be doing. They know the activity they need to be doing. And so if they're not doing it after, for a month or so, I'll sit down and talk about why. And generally speaking, it's because their head may have been off track, or they've kind of got something else that's going on in their lives. And we talk about that. And as soon as their headspace is back in the right place, the numbers start happening again. So, yeah.
You also touched on before, when you were coming up, you were obviously podcasts weren't a thing, but you were listening to interviews, you were reading books and other personal development tools. At the moment, at the level that you're at, are you still reading books? Has your learning differed at all? I
probably don't at the moment have the time to read unless I'm on holiday. I love reading a book, but the thing that's changed for me that I do now more than I ever have is picking up the phone and calling a top performer, or calling somebody just to have a chat to see how they're going. Because again, I know the skill set of what I need to be doing. I've got the right team structure in place. For me, keeping my head in the right place is speaking to other people and learning from them. Like, you'll always pick something up, but if there's a training session, like we've got Adrian Bowe doing a training session with us next week, I can't wait for that. That'll be great, because I know I'm going to learn something from it. Even speaking to him on the phone the other day, he said a couple of things that I used to do, but I probably don't do it as well as I could be doing it. And it just triggered a couple of things for me to start working on again. So I'm always looking at how what I can bring in that's going to improve me, but it's just changed the way that I do it now. I don't I don't actively go and try and seek out a video training session on something, but I'll do as much training that I can when it's put in front of me.
Yep. And sorry, carry on, Daniel.
You go. Dave, I've got a, yeah, you go, just go, Kevin.
I was going to say, in terms of accountability with yourself and your team, how are you guys keeping yourselves accountable? Are you doing KPIs daily, monthly, weekly?
No, not at all. We used to, but that to me, I as I said, I'm not a micromanager, so I know that I need to be selling roughly around 10 properties a month for 10 months of the year. So in order to do that, I need to be listing 2 to 3 properties a week. So I just keep it simple. If I'm not listing 2 to 3 properties per week for 4 weeks of the month, then I know that the numbers aren't going to be where they need to be at the end of the month. Yeah. So on a weekly basis, if I don't have 5 to 7 short-term sellers locked in the diary, there's a problem, and I go, okay, we need to get on the phones. So I don't try and overcomplicate it. I don't try and look at the figures too much, but I just know if the basics are there, if I'm doing enough presentations, then the listings will come in. And if I don't have the presentations in the diary, then what are my associates doing to get me in front of more people?
Right. So what I'm hearing from that is you put more energy into the tasks that need to be done based on what's happening at the moment, rather than fix, we have to do this, we have to do that. It's more, okay, where's my energy need to be to make sure we're getting a result? Is that kind of what?
Yep. 4 weeks ago, I think I had 1 listing presentation booked for the whole week, and that scared me. So I spoke to the team and we need to really change the way that what we're doing and the activity we're doing. In the last 10 days, I've listed 15 properties.
Massive.
So that's just again getting in the right headspace.
Yeah, for sure.
And I got an interesting question from a buyer's agent's perspective. What would your advice be for buyer's agents on the different side in terms of being consistent and drumming up business? What would your advice be?
Look, I love working with buyer's agents because we've both got a vested interest in a deal getting done. I think there's some buyer's agents that I find interesting because they try and almost think that they're outsmarting an agent, or they're not transparent with an agent. You're never going to then have a good relationship moving forward. So with buyer's agents, the best thing you can do is work with an agent. Obviously, you're working for your client to get them a good deal. We understand that as agents, but we're working with our client to get them a good deal. There's got to be some in between where it's a fair deal for both sides. So for buyer's agents, the better your relationships with agents, the more chance you're going to get of getting into things off market. You're going to get the agent trying to help you get a deal done because they want to help you just because they like you. That's the thing. A lot of agents will do deals with people that they like over and sort of try and not do deals with people they don't like, especially when the market's hot and you've got a choice of buyers. So with buyer's agents, you do have to build relationships. I would say, agents are your friends rather than the common enemy, which I think sometimes some buyer's agents, they feel like they've got to try and one up agents, where I just feel like you've got to have good relationships.
Yeah, I totally agree. What would your advice be to building those relationships? And when you're getting a call from a buyer's agent when they're trying to source property, how do you like a buyer's agent to approach that conversation? Yep. What would your tips be on that?
So I think with buyer's agents, you've got to build credibility, because there's a lot of buyer's agents that we meet that come in that sort of try and announce themselves and then you never hear from them again. So I think it's more spending time in an area, working, asking questions, going through, like some of the better buyer's agents that I've built relationships with, they would come through pretty much every open home, even if they didn't have a buyer for the property, because they're wanting to build relationships, but they also would get to know the market pretty well. Also for me, trust is a big thing with a buyer's agent. If I'm giving a buyer's agent an address of an off-market listing or a property, I don't want to hear that my competitors are then knocking on the door 2 days later, which has happened with some buyers agents where, they're going around and telling their way of building relationships with agents is going, oh, that agent's just told me that they've got this one off market, you should try and door knock it. So trust is a big thing as well. You've got to build trust, and trust is earned, not just assumed.
Yeah. Crazy.
Kev?
Yeah, mate. I guess in terms of, just before we wrap up, for the younger agents, what would be your number one advice? I know, like, seeing yourself as your only competition, but what would be your other biggest advice, just to wrap up, for young agents that are new into the industry, 1 to 2 years?
Yep. So set a goal for yourself, whatever it is, and just work hard towards that goal, and don't let anyone get in the way of it. Find good agents within your business, within your area, and go and sit down, have a coffee, learn from them, and just, you'll always get something good. Like Kevin, you and I caught up 6 months ago. Hopefully you got 1 or 2 things out of that you may have implemented in your own business. But you can learn so much from people that are already doing what you want to do. But find people that you almost would like to emulate and try and learn as much from them as possible.
Brilliant. Awesome. David, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Guys, if anyone needs to sell anything in the Upper North Shore, you know who to call.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.